My name is Linda. I am 54 years old, and I have spent most of my life believing that love is measured by sacrifice. For nearly 20 years, I worked 3 jobs because I wanted my son to have every opportunity I never had. I believed that every long day, every sleepless night, and every sacrifice would be worth it one day. But I never imagined that the greatest heartbreak of my life would come from the person I loved more than anyone else. My son. His name is Ethan. When Ethan was only 8 years old, my husband died suddenly from a heart attack. One ordinary morning, we were a happy family of 3. By that evening, our lives had changed forever. I still remember standing in the hospital hallway, holding Ethan's small hand while trying to stay strong. He kept asking me when his father was coming home. I didn't know how to answer. That night, I made a promise to myself. No matter how difficult life became, I would give my son the future his father had always dreamed of. The next morning, I started looking for more work. During the day, I worked as a cashier at a neighborhood grocery store. In the evening, I cleaned office buildings after everyone had gone home. Every weekend, I waited tables at a small family restaurant. 3 jobs, 7 days a week. There were days when my feet hurt so badly that I could barely walk. Sometimes I came home after midnight and had to wake up again before sunrise. I often survived on only 4 hours of sleep. Still, I never complained. Every morning, I smiled before waking Ethan because I never wanted him to see how exhausted I was. Children should carry dreams, not their parents' worries. Money was always a problem. After paying the rent and the bills, very little was left. Some months, I skipped dinner so Ethan could eat healthy meals. I wore the same winter coat for years because buying new clothes for myself never seemed important. Whenever Ethan needed new shoes, I repaired my old ones instead of replacing them. I stopped buying things I liked. I stopped thinking about my own dreams. Everything became about Ethan. He was a bright little boy with endless curiosity. He loved reading books. He asked questions about everything. Every evening, after finishing my second job, I sat beside him and helped him with his homework. Sometimes I was so tired that I almost fell asleep while reading his school books. But seeing him learn made every difficult day feel worthwhile. Before going to bed, Ethan always hugged me. Then he smiled and said the same words. "Don't worry, Mom. When I grow up, I'll take care of you." Those words gave me the strength to keep moving forward. Years passed faster than I expected. Ethan graduated from high school with excellent grades. The day he walked across the stage to receive his diploma, I cried harder than anyone in the audience. Every sacrifice suddenly felt meaningful. Soon afterward, he received a scholarship to a respected university. The scholarship paid most of his tuition, but it didn't cover everything. There were still books to buy, housing to pay for, food, transportation. Without thinking twice, I accepted even more overtime. Some nights, I returned home so exhausted that I fell asleep without eating dinner. Whenever Ethan called from college, I pretended everything was wonderful. I wanted him to focus on his education, not my struggles. 4 years later, he graduated with honors. A month after graduation, he found an excellent job at a large technology company in the city. I had never been prouder. At the grocery store, I showed his graduation picture to every customer who was willing to look. For the first few months, Ethan called me almost every evening. He told me stories about his new office, his coworkers, and the exciting projects he was working on. Listening to his voice made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. Then, little by little, everything began to change. Our conversations became shorter. Instead of talking for an hour, we spoke for only a few minutes. Sometimes he sounded distracted. Sometimes he said he was too busy to talk. Sometimes he didn't answer my calls until days later. I kept telling myself not to worry. He is building his future, I whispered whenever I felt lonely. One Sunday morning, I baked Ethan's favorite apple pie. It had been almost 6 months since I had seen him. I carefully placed the pie in a box and drove to his apartment without telling him. I wanted to surprise him. As I stood outside his apartment building, my heart was filled with excitement. I imagined us drinking coffee together, laughing, and talking about life the way we used to. I rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, Ethan opened the door. His face lit up with surprise. For one brief moment, I saw the same little boy who used to run into my arms after school. Then his expression suddenly changed. He looked over his shoulder. His smile slowly disappeared. Without saying a word, he quietly stepped outside and gently closed the apartment door behind him. I looked at him with confusion. Then I smiled and lifted the apple pie. "I thought you might enjoy a little surprise," I said. "I baked your favorite pie this morning." For a moment, Ethan didn't say anything. He looked nervous. He kept glancing toward the apartment door. Finally, he took a slow breath. "Mom," he said softly, "my coworkers are inside." I smiled. "That's wonderful. I'd love to meet them." Instead of smiling back, Ethan lowered his eyes. "I don't think that's a good idea." I frowned. "Why not?" He hesitated. Then he spoke words I never thought I would hear. "They don't know much about my family. I told them you live in another state. I don't want them asking questions." For several seconds, I couldn't speak. The warm apple pie suddenly felt heavy in my hands. I looked at my son, hoping he would smile and tell me he was joking. But he didn't. His face remained serious. "I just don't want things to become awkward," he whispered. A deep pain settled inside my heart. I had worked 3 jobs to build his future. Now he was ashamed to let me walk through his front door. I forced myself to smile. "I understand. You should go back to your guests." He looked relieved. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'll come and visit you next weekend." I nodded. "Take care of yourself." Without another word, I turned around and walked toward the elevator. When the elevator doors closed, I finally allowed my tears to fall. On the drive home, I cried harder than I had cried in many years. Every memory came rushing back. The nights I worked until midnight. The mornings I woke before sunrise. The birthdays I missed because I had to earn extra money. The meals I skipped so Ethan could have enough to eat. I had never regretted those sacrifices. Until that day. When I arrived home, I placed the untouched apple pie on the kitchen table. The house felt painfully quiet. For the first time in years, I questioned whether I had failed as a mother. Over the next several weeks, I stopped calling Ethan. If he was embarrassed by me, I didn't want to make his life more difficult. Whenever he sent a short message saying he was busy, I simply replied, "I understand." One rainy afternoon, while I was reading a book near the window, someone knocked on my front door. When I opened it, Ethan was standing there. His clothes were wet from the rain. His eyes were red. Before I could say a single word, he wrapped his arms around me. He held me tightly, like a frightened little boy. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. Again and again. "I'm so sorry." I gently held his shoulders. "What happened, Ethan?" He couldn't answer. Instead, he walked inside and placed a small cardboard box on the kitchen table. "I found this while cleaning my apartment," he said quietly. His hands were shaking. I slowly opened the box. Inside were old family photographs. My husband's wedding ring. School drawings Ethan had made when he was a child. Old hospital bills from the year my husband died. Receipts from grocery stores. Electricity bills marked past due. Old paychecks from my second and third jobs. Then I noticed something at the bottom of the box. A small blue notebook. The moment I saw it, I recognized it. It was the notebook where I had written every expense, every bill, and every sacrifice for almost 20 years. Ethan carefully opened the notebook. He pointed to one page. Written in my own handwriting were the words, "Skipped dinner tonight." Ethan needed new school shoes. He slowly turned another page. Worked 16 hours today. Too tired to eat. But Ethan smiled after school. Worth every minute. As he continued reading, tears rolled down his face. He looked at me and whispered, "I never knew.